feeder here, this feeder here is a good one to take apart and help clean. But platform feeders, if you put too much seed out, it molds, especially if it's rainy and humid. If the seed sits on there, it can mold. You can get blasto, another kind of fungus, and it can be a problem. You can have seed holes underneath the feeding area. We might want to move, if you're feeding birds on the ground, you might want to move the area where you're putting the seeds so that you can make sure that mold doesn't grow. We had a Chesapeake retriever who got blasto from, and we think it was from just keeping his face in the ground where the seed was. That's what the veterinarian thought. So that blasto is in the ground, conjunctivitis is in the ground, and we don't want the birds going from feeder to feeder. So we clean them up and we can help alleviate some of the problems, the diseases that we get. So there are other risks with bird feeding. You can see here, I have put up some Christmas decoration that stays up year round on this door. And if you're going to set up a feeder, you want it within 3 feet of the house so they can land on it and pull up. You can see the reflection in this nice clean door. Usually I try to keep my doors, the window glass on the outside dirty, so it cuts down on reflection, but it's not very good at that. The cardinal is notorious for flying into windows and being territorial and coming up and thinking there's another cardinal there. But if you're going to not have a feeder within 3 feet, you want to keep that feeder about 10 feet at least away from the structures, so the birds are not thinking that that is a force that they're flying into. Another thing to worry about at feeders is predation. Here I have a Cooper's hawk that may sit up in the tree, and because they hunt from a perch and they hunt in forested areas, and they wait for birds. So especially blue jays are their favorite, and mourning doves, and they are going to just wait and take advantage of all the birds congregating at feeders. So there are ways of dealing with that, but remember, it's nature. I was once sitting on the front porch about 30 feet away. We had a feeder set up. All of a sudden, it became totally silent. There were hundreds of birds out in all of our feeders, and it became totally silent. And I said, oh boy, there's a hawk. Next thing I know, there's a hawk swoops down and he lands on the table beside me, 16 inches away from me, staring into each other's eyes, and he missed, but he landed on the table beside me. That was a treat, actually, being able to see his face, his feathers, the parts of his feathers. He was that close. I was thankful I could focus that close, actually. So there's predation of cats, snakes. Well, there are predator alarms that are really thankful for us. When the hawk shows up, there are 2 things that happen. They get totally silent and fly away, all the smaller birds, or they mob them. They gang up on them and tell everybody what's going on. And so when this mobbing occurs, the small perching birds, sometimes they can even kill a bird or chase away a snake or chase away a cat. So cats, hawks, owls, snakes, they're all predators of birds that could be at your feeder. So in fact, the titmouse here and the chickadee here, there's a Cherokee name for them, and they both translate to mean messenger. So the titmouse, the tufted titmouse messenger, is in the Cherokee legends is a liar. Doesn't always tell the whole story. The chickadee, on the other hand, is the truth teller. So in the Cherokee legend, both of them have, and in real life, in actual life, they both have very, very similar calls and notes and alarm notes, but they're ever so slightly different. In fact, I know for a fact, I have seen the titmouse not tell the truth, or it's his truth or her truth. When I was setting up Christmas tree lights a couple of months ago, I had a titmouse mobbing me. I had the extension cords out and I was stringing the lights, and I looked around. I said, what is she telling me? And I looked, and there was a black extension cord, heavy duty, twisted up, and I think she thought it was a black rat snake. So she was ever so slightly telling her truth, but it wasn't the truth. Other birds came around and they looked and said, oh, that is not a black rat snake. It's 28 degrees. What would it be doing out anyway? But they are, you may have been in the woods and all of a sudden you start hearing a lot of birds at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's unusual. There may be a hawk, there may be an owl that's sitting around all day long, and they're telling us what's going on. But these three birds, the blue jay, the titmouse, and the chickadee, they're some of the most common birds that we have in Middle Tennessee at our feeders. So they're really good to notify the other birds what's going on. They don't sit long. They may land for 1001 and fly off, except the jay. It will sit on the platform feeder and eat everything, put seeds in its mouth. I've counted 16 seeds once that it stuck in its mouth. I don't even know how it flew off. And then it went out and buried all of them in the ground. So you want to have quality seed. You want to make sure you're using this year's seed, that the seed hasn't expired or the food hasn't expired. So I'm going to look at some different kinds of food right now. If you have bluebirds or you want bluebirds, they love mealworms. They love fruit, but mealworms, dried mealworms, are their favorite food. I have made just mealworm feeders for them, and they'll go out and they'll just sit there all day long and eat those mealworms. They're not that expensive. A good source for seeds is like the Co-op or Tractor Supply, Lowe's, Home Depot. Kroger even has some. Publix even has some. Walmart even has some. But those mixtures aren't the best kind to get sometimes for attracting the birds that you want. So mealworms are really, really good for bluebirds if you have seen bluebirds around and you want them to get closer for you to look at. Then there are thistle seeds, the Niger seed. If you're like me, you don't like thistle growing out in your yard or out in your farm fields. They don't feel good on your dog's feet. They have those nasty bristles. But the Niger or thistle seed that is sold for goldfinches, which is one of their favorite foods, is inexpensive and it's safe to have. It's radiated so it won't germinate, and the birds just love it. So you can see that this photograph is taken before the final molt of the birds, of the goldfinches. The goldfinches will lose every one of those feathers that you see in the photograph and regrow them with a different color plumage, usually by the end of September. So the Niger seed in a tube feeder, notice the multiple perches, and those perches are, usually they are plastic coated so that in the really, really cold days, the bird's feet don't stick to them. This is, oops, I'll go back. Maybe I'll go back. This feeder here is a great feeder to use, and it has sunflower seed in it. This is the black oil loaded with high proteins. You see the chickadees love it. But notice that this feeder is domed, and so it keeps water off of the perches, and it protects the birds while they are sitting. And another plus of that dome is if that Cooper hawk hawk decides to fly down, it's not going to get those birds. So I put domes on a lot of my feeders to protect the birds as well as to protect the seed. Now, the black oil seeds with their hull are messy, and when they hit the ground, that's when you start getting the problems with the mold and the various fungi that grow on them. So I like using sunflower hearts, and everything comes to sunflower hearts. The woodpeckers, but the smaller birds, they love the sunflower hearts. They are easy to pick up, and they fly back to the perch and fly back quickly, and they're not expending too much energy other than eating them. The safflower seed, I don't know if any of you have ever used it, but it is very difficult for squirrels and grackles to pop that seed covering. So I buy most of my seed at Tractor Supply and in a place in Nashville called the Wood Thrush Shop. And the owner of the wood thrush shops told me that the safflower seed is the most popular seed that is used. The squirrels don't like it, the grackles don't like it, the starlings don't like it. And so people don't have the birds around that they don't want, and they don't have the squirrels do not prefer it. Now, one of the things that is really, really important in attracting birds is to have food available at different levels. So you could have a tube feeder, and then the cracked corn is really a good seed to have on the ground. So you're going to get your turkey, you're going to get the ground doves, you're going to get the juncos, the sparrows. So it is a good application of supplying birds at different levels, because birds have different needs. Not all of them are perching. Not all of them love to hang off of a feeder. I am lucky. I have woods all around me, and I have lots of woodpeckers. So I break down every now and then, and I'll buy an expensive blend that looks like trail mix, except it's not human grade. And the woodpeckers love it. And then this woodland blend that you see here, oops, the woodland blend that you see here has about every seed that I have discussed. It has peanuts in here, and the peanuts are loved by the blue jays. So I have a pet blue jay. I put unhulled peanuts on the deck railing, and it'll come out, and I'll be sitting out there, and it'll get it. I can let it see me put it in my hand, and it'll walk around in the yard waiting for me to drop it. So you can train blue jays if you like having them around. So another type of food that is high energy that the birds love is suet. And I like suet that has peanut butter in it. This is a suet cake. You can get suet dough, and the suet dough doesn't drip. It doesn't have as much lard and fat in it, but I go, why bother? They need the fat in the winter. The nuggets, if you notice the nuggets here, the nuggets are small pieces of suet, and we put those in the platform feeders, and we have gotten bluebirds to come up and eat mealworms and the nuggets. Notice that this bird feeder has a baffle on it. Notice that we're in a wooded area here. Notice that we probably have possums and raccoons all around. We do. So if you have a baffle on a pole that's at least 5 feet high, and the baffle is 17 inches in diameter, you probably are not going to get raccoons. We have never had raccoons get into our feeders. You want your feeder at least 10 feet away from a tree, from a structure, so the squirrels can't drop down on it, or the raccoons. So all of these feeders are about 30, if you look up, about 30 feet is the closest branch, and they're about 10 feet from the trees. But this feeder here is a starling-proof, cowbird-proof suet feeder. That top comes off. It has 2 of these cakes inside of it. And then we have just a cage suet feeder here on the outside and on the outside. Notice that it's in a platform so the large birds can land on the outside. But that platform again is really to keep the fat from dropping on the ground so our big Chesapeake retriever doesn't graze all day long out there underneath the feeders, and the raccoons don't get it. Another reason for this is that we have flying squirrels. Not that I dislike flying squirrels, but one flying squirrel can eat that whole cake at one time. So we didn't know this until I put out the cake one time, and it was gone the next morning. And I put out another cake the next day, and I said, I'm going to sit out here all night until I figure out what's going on. So I put on a red light on my flashlight, and sure enough, here it comes. 4 flying squirrels. They are the cutest things on earth. They have the biggest eyes I've ever seen. They look like lemurs almost, but they flew down and landed on the feeder and started gobbling. And they have high-pitched sounds. I don't know if you've ever had a flying squirrel that you know of near you, but they are totally fascinating. They land on our cabin. You can hear them land on the aluminum roof, and pitter patter until we knew what it was. We thought the house was haunted, and we were scared to death, but the red light helped us figure out everything. And the nearest tree to that roof is like 40 feet away. So they glide from high above that house and land on it. Thud. This suet feeder is a clever design. It has a paddle for the tails of the woodpeckers. So you can see how the top, you can lift it out and put it in. Now these are all commercial. You don't have to buy any of this. You could make this with some hardware cloth and some pieces of wood on the side and invent a little top. I have several homemade suet feeders that I have in the yard, but I do have one mainly because we have lots of woodpeckers. But this is a great way to help them land and not be flopping around. So, okay, this is the Cadillac of our feeders at our house. You can see we have everything there, and the fruit, the nuggets, those bluebird nuggets we put in here, and we put whole cherries in it too. You may ask why. Well, we bought this land in 2007. In 2008, we were sitting on the front porch one day and saw a red-headed woodpecker, which is, if you've ever seen one, is the most spectacular bird there ever is. We never saw it again until we set up this feeder. And we had some old cherries one day that they were shriveled, but they weren't molded. And we thought, oh, let's just put some out. So you can see we have, in this feeder is peanut butter and cornmeal and Crisco mix. And you can find recipes for that online. And we stuffed that in there. We put the fruit out. We had the bluebird nuggets that I showed you, and we had those cherries. Well, the next thing you know, here comes a red-headed woodpecker, this bird here. Oh, it is the most spectacular bird to see up close, to see in a distance, to hear talking. And that red-headed woodpecker flew off with those cherries. We go, oh my gosh, let's go to Publix and buy some more cherries. So we got some more cherries, and they brought their babies this year. We fed cherries all summer long, the nuggets all summer long. We saw them take the nuggets to their babies and feed them. So we know we didn't see it from 2008 until 2000 to 2020. And here they are. And now we're totally fascinated with them. So all these woodpeckers will eat fruit. The red-bellied woodpecker will sit on the feeder until we bring the apples out every morning. This is a downy woodpecker. It loves the suet. It is small enough to go inside of that suet feeder that the starlings can't get in. It's only 6 inches long. These are the red-bellied and the red-headed woodpeckers are not common, but they're uncommon they're uncommon in Montgomery County. They used to be very common, used to be. If I gave you one bit of advice about bird watching and you're interested in it, start today because the world is going to be different. We're losing them. 90% of the birds that are born this year won't make it to the end of September. Just finding food to feed them or predators. It's very difficult for birds to be successful. So all of these you can get at the feeder. Now this bird is a very unusual bird. All those birds I just showed you are native. This one is not. This yellow-bellied sapsucker that we have here in Montgomery County right now may have come from Saskatchewan, Alberta, Ontario, upper state New York, Maine. They migrate, and their food, I love their name. I think maybe another reason I love birds is I love saying their names, yellow-bellied sapsucker. If you look at this birch tree here, you can see the holes they make, and these are called wells. And the wells, this is a fresh well where I'm showing you right now. This is on a sugar maple tree on our land. I photographed it last week sometime, and I've gone back. I should go today because it's in the 50s today. I should go back because this is on the southwestern side of the tree. And when the phloem starts flowing in the tree, the sap will come out. This bird is called a keystone bird. And what that means is that it provides food for other birds. And what happens, this sap comes out, which is very high in nutrition. I don't know if you've ever seen these and seen sap coming out, but you probably have seen pine trees, the sap coming out from them. That sap comes out, they eat the sap, and the phloem sap has fibers in it. So they're eating the fibers. And sometimes I walk around with a magnifier and look at what's coming out or look at the bugs that are stuck in it. But this is called a keystone bird because these birds, the brown creeper here, notice where the brown creeper's from. The brown creeper is not native to here. There's been one nesting record of them in Tennessee, and that was at Radnor Lake in Nashville, living under the bark of a shagbark hickory. But you can see that they also are from the Arctic region and the Appalachian. And these birds are very, very small. They're here. They have high-pitched voices. And the way to first find them is, and they will not go to the feeders, but they're there if the sapsucker is there. So you can attract the sapsucker at feeders, and then you can attract these birds. Look at that golden crown kinglet. Is that the most spectacular thing you've ever seen? Look at that crown. Look at it, pops up during predation alarming. It also will mob a crow, an owl, a hawk, and a snake, a cat, any of those. But it is teeny. It's only like 4 inches long. I mean, it's the smallest North American bird beside the hummingbirds. So it's it's very, very small, but they are, I won't say everywhere, but I could probably walk out of this building and hear one right now. So the keystone sapsucker they will eat the insects that the sap is sucking in, that the sap is oozing and the insects are getting stuck in. So will the downy woodpecker. So they're fun to see, and they're seldom seen. I sent out a notification, a celebration notification to my sisters about 4 weeks ago, telling them that it's finally happened. I have heard the brown creeper for the last 6 weeks, and I finally have seen the thing. And so I was way too excited. Okay, and silly. But that is mainly because the sapsucker is helping them find the insects. This yellow-rump warbler is also part of the keystone birds that they attract. The nuthatch is too. The nuthatch is year-round, so you can build a birdhouse for it, or it's going to make one in a hollow house. But look at this yellow-rumped warbler. You can spot them in cedar trees, eating the insects that are on the cedar trees this time of the year quite often. But they are also hopping around eating those insects that are on the trees. So these are all sorts of ways that you can attract them. This is a squirrel-proof feeder. When the squirrel gets on there, its weight closes up the bin and they can't get it. This is our squirrel offering. There's nothing that keeps the squirrel. It's an old satellite dish that we put up on the sugar maple tree. This is where I had the suet feeders that the flying squirrels would climb down and eat the suet and run back up the tree. So we notice there are no suet feeders there. This is a Cadillac. This Cadillac really has platforms. A lot of birds like to sit on platforms, so this has everything. But this is a covered bin, and these seeds are protected from the weather, and the birds on the cold days are going to get it. So these are various types of ways that you can build your own or buy them. They have to have water. Birds have to have water. Believe it or not, they probably need water more than the seeds or food that we're giving them. Birds insulate themselves with their feather. You may have noticed birds leaning back and preening themselves, and what they are doing is pulling oil from the base of their tail. They have a little oil gland there, and that oil gland they use to reconnect the parts of their feather. And you'll want fresh water. This has a rock in it. They can't see depth very well. See the reflection in that bird bath? So they need a rock to know that it's not too deep. Notice the height of it. I like bird feeders that are taller than my dog. And this is a very clever device. Birds find water by it moving. And this is a jiggler. It has a little solar cell in it and it rotates. And I had just cleaned the algae off of the jiggler, and the dog was supervising, of course. But this is a pretty much the height. This is an old log. This is just a planter base here. And we just put water in it in the wiggler system. You don't want water too deep. You want it so that if it is too deep, you want to add rocks or something. I have all sorts of bird baths, and some of them, I don't have one that's deeper than 2.5 inches probably. You want to clean them. They get a bacterium in it that's called Hematococcus. It turns it red. It's disgusting, and it's in the air. I get it in one of my faucets sometimes. But you want to make sure in the summertime, if you have them, to clean them out so that the mosquitoes don't live. But this wiggler is really clever because the mosquitoes will not lay the eggs in them. And the water doesn't freeze as much. So it is really important for birds, especially when it is below like 30 degrees, 28 degrees when water. This shallow depth water freezes, for you to change the water so they do have water. The next most important thing, if not the most important thing, is your habitat. So if you want to attract the birds, you want to supply them with native plants for food and dead trees. This is a plot that I went crazy on in attracting birds. So these are trees, elderberries that we have planted, and Chickasaw plums and sawtooth oaks that we planted last April. And this is a prairie, a southern prairie, which has tall grasses in it. Over here is we bulldozed out all these trees were up to right about there. So we bulldozed all the trees and we planted buckwheat all along here. So we've had 3 plantings of buckwheat in that. And that is like, when I photographed this about 2 weeks ago, maybe, when I photographed this, probably 100 goldfinches and sparrows of all sorts flew out of there. So I left quickly so I didn't disrupt them too much. But this is one of my favorite birds. It's called the snowbird, Anne Murray's snowbird song, if you know that. This is the junco. The junco is also not native to here. And it came in this year a little early, came in like the end of October. And it'll probably leave the 1st of April or so. But they are ground feeders and seed feeders, and they prefer the native insects and the native seeds. So you can't go wrong with providing habitat. So dead trees, this dead tree, I got my chainsaw, I got ready to go cut it down. It's an old crabapple. I said, that's it, you're just pitiful. And I had the chainsaw and I was attacked. I was attacked by that titmouse, the messenger titmouse. It was telling the truth. It was saying, I am going to harm you if you cut this down. And sure enough, there were 2 titmice mobbing me. So be careful. The dead trees are really special to a lot of birds. And then this tree, it fell over, and all of this mess was made by this pileated woodpecker. I don't know if you've ever heard the thunderbird or seen the thunderbird, but this thing is huge. It's bigger than a crow, and it did all of this. And this was alongside the road, and I would just pull over, and I mean, he's like a jackhammer. He doesn't attack buildings or anything, but he sure does love dead trees. So do owls, so do hawks, so do saps. A lot of things do. So the brush piles, if you're going to make brush piles, you want them to be away from your house because they attract rodents, which attract snakes. I looked out at the brush pile that was pushed away from my field where my septic tank was made, and looked down at very early in the morning, and a barred owl had in its talons about a 3-foot long black rat snake that probably the black rat snake had just finished eating some of the mice that were in that brush pile. So brush piles are marvelous, but I suggest don't have them too close to your home, because you are going to get rodents. You can see that the barred owl, it lives here year round. So this is a special bird right now. They are mating. The females have this horrible call. It sounds like somebody's murdering some human someplace nearby. And that's how she attracts the male. And they lay their eggs in February, and then they start their hunting and teaching it all over. So they're here year round. If you hear a barred owl, your house is in their territory. So that's sort of good. They're eating rodents probably. Sadly, they eat birds at bird feeders too. And they eat birds out of the nest. But most of the birds in this, most of the barred owls in our area eat rodents, chipmunks, rats, uh, small mice, and the barred owls around here don't eat small birds that much. So the native plants provide you with all sorts of birds, even in the summer months, of course, but that buckwheat field, until the turkeys completely ate it, the first planting of it, you could go out anytime once they got to the flower stage, and we would see 15, 16, 17 turkey, young families out there eating. And so if you can do cover crops, that provide seed. This is a southern mixture that we got from Roundstone in Kentucky that we planted, and you can see all the variety of birds. This is why the goldfinches were these birds. This is why they were in that field when I photographed that. All of this has gone to seed, and they're just eating these coneflowers, cosmos, all of these flower seeds that are still there. Cedar trees, these are cedar waxwings. One of the reasons that we planted the Chickasaw plums is to attract the fruit-eating birds. So hopefully we'll have some Chickasaw plums this year, maybe. We planted 24 of them. So we're excited about seeing what happens, what's attracted to it. So we also are trying to see if we can increase turkey, and we have planted hybrid chestnut trees. This is the Roundstone how to do a prairie field, and sparrows. When we first moved to the farm in 2007, we only had a few kinds of sparrows, and now I went out to the prairie, that tall grass where we have andropogon and big blue stem and little blue stem and a few other grasses. We had a Lincoln sparrow, LeConte sparrow, a grasshopper sparrow, and the white-throated sparrow, all in that field the other day. So they're there, but you've got to entice them. So winter shelter is important. Bluebird houses that I have on my property. I looked out at one another 3 or 4 weeks ago, and 4 birds were coming out of it right before sunrise. So they use those bird houses. But this is a roost that is designed for this bird right here. This is a Phoebe. You can see that where it spends its summer, and we're right at Tennessee, right here at Montgomery County, right at the end of that era, is its most southern, is the most northern place where it overwinters. So if they are here, they need as much help as possible. They are insect eaters. They sit on a perch, they fly out and will catch it in midair, or they catch it on the ground. So this right here, right now, I have a Phoebe underneath my deck in this roost, and I have another Phoebe underneath my she shed. And so I have made several roosts for them, but birdhouses and making roosts for them. And these are some other winter roosts that I have made. This is an old mailbox, and I made the openings small to cut down on the airflow. And probably if you know the Carolina wren, you know that it loves making nests where you don't want them to. This is a drying bin that I had for special wood that I use, that I make bowls with. And I had the lathe all set up, and I went to get this piece of wood to start with the bandsaw cut, and I looked in, I said, oh, well, I guess another day. So you can make all sorts of winter shelters for birds. All right, so you have birds that you may want to know a little bit more about. These are good bird sources right here. I have an app. This app right here, if I recommended one thing that you buy, I used to take my bird books with me, try to figure out what it is, but this app is amazing. This app has bird sounds, so if you hear something you're not sure, you can, and you think, oh, uh, is that a golden crown kinglet, a ruby crown kinglet, or a brown creeper? You can turn on the sounds. You go, yep, that's the brown creeper. I better keep my eye open for it, flying up, creeping up the tree and flying to the base of the next tree. So these are really good bird sources that I highly recommend. If you want to see them really up close, you want to get binoculars. There are two kinds. These are a little bit heavier. These are super duper. I have this kind. I like the Poro prism because you can get close focus better. I have 3 pairs of binoculars, 2 roof prism and one like this. This one will focus to 6 feet. It's a pair of Nikons. And then I have a pair of Zeiss and Leicas that I use, but they're just different magnification. One's 8 and one's 10. So depending how close you're sitting, if I want to see that bird that's on the feeder that's 3 feet, that's outside the window, I'm going to go get that pair. But really, to be amazed with birds, you really want to see them up close, and binoculars really help. So if you want to buy them, the magnification, this tells you how much it's magnified. And the second number tells you how much light is coming in. You want as much light as possible and maybe as much magnification. If it's a 20 and you're looking at it, you need a tripod. If it's an 8, you need to be really steady while holding them. 7, you don't have to be so steady. But the more this second number is the more expensive it is. So now it's almost spring, not really, but the birds were singing yesterday. I had the chickadees out, so I've started cleaning the purple martin houses. I lowered it, and so the birds couldn't make any nest in them. I have special openings on my houses to keep starlings out and house finches out. This is a house right here. He's thinking winterizing. Those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 purple martin houses that he lays on the ground after the birds leave in early August and migrate. So if you are thinking about getting purple martin houses, this is the time you want that house up. They're starting to migrate right now. Some of them are in they're in Alabama right now, Mobile, Alabama. They're going to be here with a scout probably by the middle of February. So I was working on cleaning this. So I got to get this cleaned, and I'm going to set up another house. I got to put the concrete in the ground. Maybe this afternoon is good because it's a little bit warm. And so I'm going to put in a new pole mount, and I'm going to put in a house that's very similar to this. These are metal houses and really easy to build from the plans. So time to start thinking. I showed this photograph of vocalization. When you start out, if you want to attract the birds, these are morning vocalizations. You can play the recording when the scouts start coming in the middle of February. And if they hear that, they'll go, oh, there are other birds here, and they might be attracted. But the best way to get them is to have them about 100 feet from a house. They love humans for some reason. They like being near houses, and open field. So you want them out in an open field. Another thing that I do is that I grow plants for the habitat, and this is my seed nursery. I have sumac right there that I collected the berries in the spring, last October. I put them in the freezer for 6 weeks, and then I boiled them and I planted them, and I did that last year as well, and I transplanted maybe 6 or 7 sumacs. You can see 3 of them that I didn't transplant. I took too long So they have to be planted now. But we're also growing sawtooth oak, and I'm a member of the American Chestnut Foundation. And to be able to get seeds from them to grow, you have to prove to them that you can grow acorns. So I'm growing some sawtooth acorns in those white cups right there. And notice that it's rodent proof. The bottom of this has hardware cloth on it. It has hardware cloth all the way around it. That's my frost cloth that I have on it that I opened up when I photographed this the other day when it got above 40 something. So if you really want to attract birds, grow like crazy. And birdhouses. If you want to build something to really help with birds overwintering, have them there in the non-winter time. So this Nest Watch is run by Cornell University. They have a website. I set this up day before yesterday because I heard this crazy chickadee doing its mating call. And I said, oh my gosh, they're going to start building. And so they use dog hair, that crazy poodle of mine that you saw at the bird feeder. When he gets groomed, I save his hair and I put it in the feeder and I clean all the bird feeders. I have 30 bird houses. I have 32 bird houses, bluebird and chickadee and wren houses all over the farm. And I clean them out every September after their end of September. And all the chickadee houses have his hair in it. So, and the Chesapeake retriever's hair. So I start putting out fresh hair for them right about now. So these are some online resources. If you want, if you start observing, there is an observation day, Project Feeder Watch Day that's coming up next in the next 3 weeks. If you keep up with hummingbirds, which I do, you can report them. The purple martin, if you want to see where the purple martins are right now, there's a migratory live map that shows you where they are. And it says, oh, I better hurry up and get that birdhouse put up. And if you want to keep up with migration in the spring, this has an active map that runs off of radar that shows you birds. Yes, you can see birds on radar. I own on my iPhone and iPad that radar that they use that tells you when biologicals are flying. So I can turn it on and see the geese. The sandhill cranes were above my house, and sure enough, they were on the radar. So these are all sorts of things to help you. The Nest Watch they also have an app, and you can record locations of nests, but you have to take a test with them to prove that you're not going to kill them. So as you can tell, I might like birds, and I am totally fascinated by them. And if you like birds, you might want to know more about them. And these are some books that I have read this year that were totally fascinating about birds. You probably have heard of at least H is for hawk, Vesper Flights. Helen McDonald is a nonfiction writer, but she writes like Rachel Carson, if you're familiar with her with Silent Spring. She writes about nature and reports the astonishment of it. So that is my program. If you have questions.
We do have one question, and it is about, are there bird clubs to join in Montgomery County?
There is the Warioto,
repeat the question.
Okay, all right. The question is, are there local bird clubs? Yes and no. The Warioto Audubon Society, WARIOTO. I thought about putting it in online resources, but they used to meet and they don't meet. They do a Christmas bird count, and it's a certain area in Montgomery County. So if you want to go on that, there's the Tennessee Ornithological Society. I did put that one on the online resources, which is in Nashville. So, and it meets at usually Radnor Lake in non-COVID times. So there are bird clubs, But the Warioto has a Facebook page, and they have not been active. 2 Christmases ago, they did the bird count, and that was their one activity that they did 2 years ago, non-COVID times. So they do exist. They just haven't been active in a long time. I'm talking about, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 years or so.
Okay, now they would like you to do another program about more bird stuff.
Well, I probably could. What do you want to know? Tell me what you want to know.
Okay.
What would you like?
Just tell
So the question is, if you want more programs, tell me what you would like. Oh, here we go. We're unmuted.
Eileena, you want to tell her more about what?
I just wanted to hear more about birds and different ways to make nest areas and different feeder stuff. It was really interesting.
You know, all right, I will do that. That nest site, let me go back up to here. This Nest Watch site, when you go there, let's see if I can get, right here. See if I can get that to open. Cannot locate the internet server. Okay, never mind. Go to nestwatch.org. So get started on your own and be brave, and find there at that site they have how to build birdhouses. Now I designate January for me my birdhouse building time. So right now I'm building a nuthatch house, and I get wood.
That would be a good thing to show us all.
Oh,
how to build
okay.
birdhouses.
All right, I can show you that. What kind of wood? I could maybe a non-COVID, when we get non-COVID, we could actually do one and build some. Okay, and I could like pre-cut some of it, and then you get the idea. Because there are certain let's see that plan that I have right here in this one. This is the one whenever I build them with others. This one is spectacular because it has all the safety features that you need. But when you go to this website over here, it says build a nest box or nest structures for one of these birds. And I just showed one section of the web page. It has like 25 different boxes that you can do. All right, so I'll do one with building, and I'll show you the do's and don'ts of drilling and pre-drilling and working with cedar wood.
And if they should be painted or stained, or if that's not safe. I mean, we need to know
all those
that.
things. Okay, I will do that. Nest Watch has all that there. I thought I had a hot link on this. See how it's saying I have a hot link, but it won't let me connect right now. But that's okay. I didn't test that before. I didn't either. It worked at my house. It's just not working here right now. So yes, all right. So we'll build some things, and I'll show you the do's and don'ts. Do y'all have drills and or would you use nails? What do you think? Do y'all
Maybe
have?
you could give Carl a list a while before you do it, and we could get the stuff ready.
Oh, that is brilliant. Okay. All right, that's a good idea.
And we can set up, in-person meetings. It just needs to be 10 or less and be able to social distance and, and such like that. So we'll talk about that.
Do y'all want to build them in the next 6 weeks?
Would be great. Then it'll be there for the birds.
Yeah, that's okay. We might try to set up one then, and I'll get my act together, and I will order the wood. It might cost us $10. Is that good?
Oh, that's good.
Is that good? All right.
Yes.
I might be able to get the wood like from Oregon Building Supply in bulk, or there's a sawmill where I get my cedar, and He usually charges me cheap just to make me leave. So, great up there at Henrietta. He goes, I don't cut cedar, but I will for you. Okay. All right. So I will problem solve that.
Okay, we've got one more question. How do I keep birds from nesting in our outdoor grill that we rarely use?
Oh, good luck. All right, now it's either a Carolina wren you have, or I have mice. So my dog goes out every day and tells me what's going on. He has killed so many mice in there. I don't think you can. Carolina wrens are amazing, and they can build a nest in 20 minutes. They are totally amazing. They hop around. In fact, I didn't take off the grill cover this week because it was too cold to go out to cook, but I saw that Carolina wren under there. Now, what I have done, all those shelters I was showing you, they're all underneath the grill. So I've given them options, and I put out the Christmas tree that I took down a couple of weeks ago. I noticed there was a Carolina wren roosting in it the other night when I walked out late and it was dark and I flushed it. So they are there. They were not that night in the grill. So maybe I don't have them in the grill right now. Sadly.
Any deterrents? Tanglefoot?
I would be afraid to do that with them. They're so little. I mean, they're only like 3 inches, 4.5. That thing. That's so see, I have all these things around for it. This one right here, the Carolina wren was in it, but then the Phoebe came and chased it out. So I made her another one, and I didn't put that photograph in, and it's down here to a little bit. It's about 8 feet from it. And she stays in it. She's in there, but I noticed she was out of it the other night and in the grill. So I think maybe having other things around is what has worked for me. Other nesting, roosting places. Are they in there now? Have you seen them in there? Yes.
Do they go in
Yeah,
those
go ahead and
things just
unmute.
to sleep at night?
They do. Yes, they roost. They roost there.
I never thought about making something for them to sleep in. Poor things.
I mean, I have old boots that I have put out for them to roost in. But really, look at all those things. I have my sister on her porch. I did not include my sister's front porch is really a Carolina wren roosting site. She has gourds that she's cut holes in on that front porch, and it's only 40 feet long. She has two in 2 different gourds. She has an old Christmas house. She has a cabin birdhouse. She has another birdhouse on one end. Now, the problem with that for my sister is once it warms up enough, the snakes come and try to eat them. So. So make it.
Oh, I was just going to say, are there any more questions? You can either open up your mic or type it in the chat book real quick.
Is this what is you want to save this to the?
Yes, I have recorded this session
Oh, okay.
and I will get it up on my YouTube channel and post it later. I was a little bit late in hitting that record button. I'm always bad about
I
that.
saw that pop up.
My bad. But yeah, we'll get this out online and
You
so
probably
people
got
can
it
go back
up.
and watch it. So. Okay, if there are no other questions, I can see that everyone really enjoyed this session and wants to know more about birds. So we'll get some of those things scheduled that we discussed, and I'll be sending out notifications about the next Wacky Wednesday
Yeah, maybe we could get one on a different thing, lots of different things we could plant, like not in the fields, but around your houses to attract the birds.